Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Chuck Murphy, and welcome to Key Takeaways. Today, Maggie Bright and I are talking to Olga Sajkowski. And Olga is someone that we have known well for years. She used to work with us. And in addition to that wonderful dot on her resume, she has a really fascinating career where she's jumped between traditional research vendors to insights at ad agencies and is now client side researcher for Riot Games, the maker of League of Legends, who many of you may know. But she's just a really well rounded researcher who's able to do a number of things. And Maggie and I thought it would be really interesting to talk to her about her career and how she's navigated these different roles. And we hope you enjoyed the discussion. Good morning, everyone. I'm joined by Olga Sajkowski today and Maggie Bright. And
Hello, good morning.
yeah, good morning.
Hey, gang.
Olga, how did
Except
I
for it's
do?
afternoon. But other than that, we're off to a good start.
Olga, how did I do on your last name? I've had a lot of practice with it, and I still get nervous when I say it.
My last name?
So,
Pretty close.
how was
Pretty
my
close.
pronunciation? Like 7 out of 10?
Like eight out of 10.
8 out of 10. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Olga and Maggie and I have known each other for a number of years. Olga used to work with us at Murphy Research, and she is
Good
now
times.
at Riot Games, which some people will be super passionate about, and some people won't know. How do you explain Riot to people that don't know it?
Most people know it, for better or for worse.
Do they?
Those that know and love it. I think our players and fans are some of the most passionate and engaged people that I've ever met. So it makes research really interesting and really fun, actually, on the client side. Those that don't know it, I describe it as the biggest IP you've never heard of.
That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, League of Legends is the biggest thing you've never heard of. Like,
Yeah.
it's really crazy how big it is. Like,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's insane. For context, this is my favorite fun fact to contextualize it is the Super Bowl on average gets 95 million viewers. Our World Finals last year had 143 million.
Wow.
it is so insane.
Yeah.
That's a great stat. I
Yeah,
love that.
just puts it into context. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Riot put it an infographic on that, like, and this is at least 5 years ago now when I first saw this, and I just remember being blown away. Like they just compared the size of the audiences, and it was a really neat looking infographic. And I remember when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was so big.
yeah, it's insane. I'm not a gamer, so I came to Riot kind of in a serendipitous way. I was working with you guys at Murphy, and I saw that an old colleague of mine had gone over to run Global Channel Publishing, which is like the in-house media agency over there. And I reached out to her under the pretext of business development. And she's like, "Oh, I need your help. Your ears must be burning." I'm like, "How can we help?" And she's like, "Not we. I want you." So she pulled me over. And as I'm the token non-gamer hire over there, which brings in a lot of different perspectives, for better or for worse. But I've really grown to appreciate and love what Riot does. I think just seeing how engaged and passionate our fans are in the worlds that we're creating, and we're expanding outside of gaming right now to engage further with people and share the stories and the characters that we're developing with them through other means like entertainment. So yeah, it's really cool.
That's
I will
awesome.
say
That's
my
awesome.
teenaged son, which is a hard sentence to even say, was super excited that we were talking to someone from Riot today. So
Ooh, does he play League?
he plays now. He's been playing Valorant, and I'm probably
Valorant, yes.
Valorant. Yeah. See, I'm not clearly not a gamer either, but I was asking him about it because the other day I made him stop what he was doing to eat dinner, and he's like, "I'm going to be banned for 24 hours, Mom, and it's your fault."
Yeah.
So that is I am the killer of games and dreams when it comes to 13-year-old boys.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, Valorant is actually the one game that I am playing. I do play League terribly with my team. I actually just hired a new guy on the team, and I put it into his professional development plan that he has to make me a proficient League player, because he's quite good himself. But Valorant's fun. It's easier to handle. It's a tac shooter game. Like the barrier to entry is a lot lower than
Yeah.
something like League, which requires thousands upon thousands of hours to even
So
be
he did
moderately
play
proficient.
League for a while, and I think, he was not allowed to spend thousands and thousands of hours. So that may be why the change occurred. But I will say during COVID, gaming was one of the ways that he was able to stay social and active with his cohort, and even his school was, they were okay with gaming because of that piece of it. And not that they're not okay with it, but they kind of encouraged it to some extent because it was like, hey, this is how they're getting their social connection at
Yeah,
in this time. So I will
yeah.
say, gaming was really good in our household during COVID.
And a lot of households. you're you're
Well,
not
it's funny,
alone.
like this gets so hard, and I think it's harder with boys than with girls. But where to draw the line? Like, what's too much screen time? But so much of how they socialize is through the screens now, and as
Yeah.
they get my kid, I mean Maggie, for context, for those of you who don't know, Maggie's a little bit ahead of me, and I'm a little bit ahead of Olga in terms of the age of our kids. But it's it's so crazy as the boys start to get to that age where like they are truly socializing through the game, and to know like how much is too much. And I find my wife and I talk about that like every day. Like, should we let this continue? It's great that all his friends are on it and they are socializing, but they also like it could become a lot of screen time. Some of these things are so these games could be so addicting and so engaging. You know that they get in that world. And it's hard to get them out of it. Um, it's a really hard line to draw as the kids get older.
For sure. I mean, I have a 3.5-year-old, and she's like schooling us at Mario Kart now.
I
That's
will
funny.
say, I played some Mario Kart during COVID, and I was like, oh, simpler times. Like,
Yeah.
I understand this one.
Yeah, it's funny. The
But
kids when the kids are younger, the Mario Kart, the Switch brought Mario Kart back. It's funny to see them all playing. I'm like, oh my god,
yep,
that game looks. It looks so similar to how it looked when we were kids. Obviously, the graphics are better, but I'm like, this is the same game. I played this game. Like, it's
right.
Yeah.
really wild.
I'm still
Um,
bad at this game. That was my takeaway.
oh, I can hang with Mario Kart. I am terrible at League, and I was just as bad at Wild Rift. I haven't tried Valorant yet. I'm gonna have to try that one. But Olga, I wanted to talk to you. So it's funny. So throughout my career, people make fun of me because I have a pretty crazy list of places I've worked. Like I have a pretty diverse, and I get made fun of for that all the time. And I think that you probably beat me. Like in terms of, I haven't met too many people that have worked. I mean, Olga, really, you have a wide range of jobs that you worked in. Maybe you want to give us just a brief uh,
I
intro
mean,
to how you found research, like how you ended up in research and where you were before, and
yeah.
and-
Well, we can go way, way back. I mean, I think one of my first jobs was I was Franklin the turtle at a toy store in the dead heat of summer in a massive furry turtle suit, trying to bring kids into a toy store and sell them candy. It was pretty funny. But no, research. So I did my undergrad at the University of Toronto, a program there in international relations and peace and conflict studies. And I fell in with an academic think tank that is run out of the University of Toronto in conjunction with the London School of Economics. They're called the G8 Research Group. They basically just do research on the G8. When I was there, our key mandate was just tracking and assessing progress against key commitments that the G8 member states would make to at each summit and ministerial meetings. I thought I'd have a career in like public policy, foreign affairs, coming out of that. And so I applied. No, sorry, I took a couple of years off, was a flight attendant. Then I went back. Then I went back and I applied at a company called Ipsos. And in Canada, Ipsos had an arm of the organization called Ipsos Read at the time. I think there's something else now, but they were basically all doing like public opinion polling work. And I thought that was going to be my very glamorous life. Um, Ipsos hired me, but they didn't have room at Read, so they stuck me in at ASI, which is their marketing research arm, to kind of learn the ropes. And then 6 months later, when an opportunity opened at Read, they were like, "Hey, we're ready for you." And I'm like, "This is kind of fun, this marketing research stuff. I kind of dig it." And I was working with a lot of really great ad agencies. They were my clients. I was working with Leo Burnett, Ogilvy, kind of all the big names there, and I kind of just was very intrigued by like the advertising marketing world, and and stuck with it. So that's how I found marketing research.
Yeah. And you've stuck with it for a while, so you obviously really enjoy it, right? Like,
I do. I do. It's funny. I often describe myself as a right brain and a left brain field. I've always been a very creative kid, a storyteller, national public speaking champion, um, a bit of a comedian, and so I enjoy the discovery, just kind of the human discovery aspect of research, just learning insane things about people, and then using those insane things to tell cool stories and sell people stuff is kind of fun.
yeah, it's funny. There's it's such a unique field, right? Like I always tell people, like I actually really enjoy the work, like which is a little bit nutty because it's a unique field, and there is a lot of there's a lot of details and there's a lot of rote work that goes into it. But at the end of the day, like why does this person do this? I think is fascinating.
We get to
Uh,
people watch all day long,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It's through
I love
different,
that's what I do in restaurants and everything anyway. So
Yeah.
right?
I drive my wife crazy because I'm like, why do you think those two? What do you think they're talking about? It looks like I'm very like
Yeah.
I'm all over people's business. It's ridiculous.
I feel like I create backstories for people all the time so that I can
Yeah,
fit them into like the narrative of what they're doing now.
totally.
100%.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
I
Olga, can I
think
ask you a question? Because Maggie and I were just talking about this, but were you ever scared of public speaking, or were you comfortable with it from the beginning?
I was comfortable with it from the beginning. I've always been a ham.
So it's kind of so we were talking about this. I'd be curious to know what you think about this, but I was guessing with Maggie that I would guess that like the incidence of people that don't have a fear of public speaking is 1 or 2%. Like I think the vast majority of people, even a small group presentation scares them, but you are very comfortable with it. You enjoy it, which is so that's not something you had to develop like a comfort with it. You always kind of had it.
I've always been a ham. I've always lived it. I think for me too is like, how to explain this? I have this like, there's a comforting thought that I always come back to, that like no one's thinking about you. Like everyone is so wrapped up in their
Yeah.
own heads that like at the end of the day, like no one's gonna remember you, no one's gonna think about you, and that's very liberating. Like once you lean into that notion, it's really freeing.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's right, that's a super insightful comment because that's something that a lot of that happens in everyday life too. People are
Yeah,
so you see people that are scared to order in waitresses in restaurants or whatever. It's like the
yeah,
waitress is not thinking about what you're ordering. They don't care. Like just
no,
Right?
say what you want. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
it's
I don't get embarrassed very easily.
It's an
yeah.
excellent quality. I think everyone should have that quality.
See, Maggie and I were talking about the fact that like even like small presentations when I was younger, I still don't like it. I still don't like having to be the one that's like standing there. Even though I've gotten a lot of experience at it, but it's hard for me. Um, but that's awesome that you were so comfortable with it.
I went the kind of the opposite way of you. I started in with an advertising background and then fell into market research. And I know you started more traditionally at a more traditional market research firm and then spent time working with ad agencies, and would love to hear your perspective on kind of how that transition went, because it's a different thought process, a different strategy, different kind of business. I mean, it's a very different
Yeah,
business. So would love to
yeah.
hear kind of because I think that's the next iteration of your resume, unless I missed another run as a mascot.
Can I say one thing in addition to what Maggie just said, and tell me if you would agree with this? But when I look at your career, and this is one of the things I was thinking about when we were talking about you doing this podcast. You've had like 3 different jobs in advertising. Is it fair? So you've been a research supplier.
Yeah,
You're now brand side. But I would put like Saatchi and Palisades as kind of more advertising, like kind of different, even
definitely.
though you were in an insights role, right? Is that kind of how you
That
think about it? Like 3 different kind of.
totally. Yeah. The way I can kind of describe kind of the three phases, and the key difference across the three is the stakeholders and the end clients and the work that you impact. So vendor side, I loved my time on vendor side. It's where I honed my craft skills and was exposed to a wide variety of methodologies and categories and clients and personalities. Um, Vendor side, kind of your impact is a little bit truncated. Like you do the research, you you write the proposal, you do the work, you ship it, and then it's very rare that you get to see kind of a product through to the end and really get to experience and see the impact that your work had on the life cycle of a full product. On the ad agency side, it's different because you're in the business of ideas. You're in the business of like creating moments or effectively art with the end goal of selling people stuff. But you get to see the impact of it. So I'll never forget this one project we did for an automotive company, and they were trying to humanize the in dealership experience for women and for millennials at the time, because it was all about millennials in the early aughts or mid aughts. And we realized that, you know, to do this, we needed to give women and millennials an ally. And so we came up with, like, it was kind of like a ripoff of Flo. You know, she's kind of like the zany kind of in-store person that you get to interact with. And so we came up with this idea for, her name was Laurel. And we had this whole brief about her and who she was as a person. And then it came down to actually casting the woman to play Laurel. And we had like a laundry list of comedic actresses. I think we saw like 30 or 40 in one day. And we whittled the list down to 4. And for better for worse, the creative directors could not make a call. They're like, they were stuck on these 4 women. And so we ended up doing a ton of research on these actresses to see if they were kind of moving the needle in the way that we wanted it to move. And we ended up doing like quantitative, qualitative. We did neuro research, like legitimately the agency sunk $1 million into the research around casting this perfect character. And it came down to 2. One was like, great, she hit all the marks. She was exactly who we wanted to be. But we saw something strange in the neuro research that like at certain key moments during her spot, women tended to like tune out. And the psychiatrist or psychologist we were working with at the time, she posited that like, oh, it's because she's too attractive. And so she's, you know, women are a little bit put off by the fact that, you know, they want to go to the dealership, they want to meet Laurel, but then at the same time, they're like, oh, but I don't want Laurel talking to my husband. Like, they feel threatened. Whereas this other one, she hit all the marks. But there's something off about her as well. I can't remember what was wrong with her, but with the one that we ended up casting, the neuro research just effectively told us, we just need to put like a frumpy sweater on her and like put her hair up in a bun, and then women will find her like way more accessible and friendly. So yeah, I don't remember what the question was or where the story's going, but I love that like we got to do all this crazy research and like, oh yeah, impact. I was talking about impact. So I got to see the impact of it. So we ended up casting Laurel. Laurel's now, I think, made like well over 7 figures as like as the mascot for this automotive brand. She's still on the air 12 years later in way different capacities, but it was
still wearing the frumpy sweater.
Still wearing the frumpy sweater.
And to frumpify her a little bit, right?
We had to
frumpify
Laurel. Yeah.
It's crazy how like sometimes our work does come down to these very small decisions that you wouldn't think about if you hadn't been there, right?
Yeah.
Well, but it's funny though, a lot of people don't understand with so much advertising how much those decisions aren't necessarily small, right? And that's in Hollywood, they talk about this all the time, how like a minor casting change can make or break a movie. And it's true in a lot of ways. Like your reactions, so many people's reactions to things are kind of subconscious. Like they don't know as much about why they're reacting to something as they do. But I always thought that would be like to go back to your career, like that. I always thought that Sachi in particular would be just a really fascinating place to work. Like just getting involved in some of these storytellings and things. And it's interesting that you've had like these 3. You've done it at a really high level too, right? It's not like you've been involved in like really cool places on all 3 sides, and they're very different jobs. And so you obviously have an ability to continue to learn, right? And to step into new roles and try new things. Do you like that part of it? Do you like the switching it up and the challenge?
I do. I really do. I mean, I think it's a function of my generation, but I've always been a little bit of like a job jumper. Like I rarely stay more than 3 years in a role. For better or for worse, I don't know if it's fear of stagnation, but I consistently, you know, want to learn new things. I think with Riot, my role right now has been the biggest stretch for me to date. I think coming client side, it's just a different way of working. The stakeholder management is a lot higher stakes. The questions we ask are really big and expensive. So yeah, I'm feeling stretched right now, and I mean that in a good way. Like I'm challenged every day. I'm learning a ton. I'm learning a business I've never really been a part of. Like it's gaming, but then esports. Like we very much operate like a sporting organization. So like the questions we're asking, we're working with the Olympic Committee, with teams, team like major like NFL, NBA team owners come to us for stuff. So it's really cool. It's really really exciting.
But you're such at the forefront. You're in such a hot area that so many brands and organizations and media, they see the engagement, they want to be involved, but a lot of people don't know, right? Like it's a pretty rare person that understands. And when I say rare in terms, it's a little bit of a unicorn of someone that's like high enough up at some of these organizations to make a policy decision or a strategy decision, but also understands like esports the way
Yeah.
someone who's really played it has, right? Like
Yeah.
it's evolving so fast. It's so different than it was just like 5 or 10 years ago.
For sure. It's becoming mainstream, and I think that's it's really important to our fans that they're getting that validation that esports is not just for nerds anymore. It's not for like basement dwellers who sit in front of a screen all day. Like to your point, Chuck, like the partnerships that we're working on are some of the are huge. They're massive. They're with like the biggest brands, and the brands want to work with us. They're excited to work with us, and in turn our fans feel validated. They're like, we've made it. Like people want to show up now and play with us.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah, and the category, like if you really zoom out, gaming as a category just continues to grow, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of that obviously is casual and less engaged than the stuff you guys do, but it's gaming category continues to grow, and brands at the same time that gaming is continuing to take attention, they're losing some of their traditional intentional areas, opportunities to advertise and media, and so they're having to rethink this. But it's a complicated world for a lot of them, and we see that on our side of the business. Like they're not quite sure how to navigate what to do.
I can say one of a pivotal moment for me in the esports conversation was when one of our clients who's heavily involved in fitness and those types of things came to us and asked us to do research on the training regime involved with esports. And it was like a really interesting moment for me to be like, oh, like they're thinking about designing products around this, and they're thinking about how to be more innovative in this space that is very, that I think we could have had a debate, maybe not with your team, Olga, but with other people a few years ago about like, well, is it even fair to call it a sport? And now we're seeing this like whole revolution in how products are positioned and designed and that type of thing around the industry. And so I think that's been a big learning curve for me as well. We do a ton of research in fitness and nutrition and those types of areas, and have recently added attributes to our syndicated study around esports just to understand like how big is this. And when someone asked us to do a recruit of collegiate esports teams, I was like, there's no way we're going to find these people, and they exist. Like we had no problem finding people to talk to about that. And so I think it's fascinating that gaming is changing the industry in a lot of ways. And a lot of traditional players, like you mentioned, are sort of changing the way that they do business because of gaming, or esports. I shouldn't call it gaming. Sorry.
Okay,
I got us way off track.
No, that's right. You touched a little bit on this, but I want to go back to it just briefly. But I do think that there's not very many people that make like one major jump in their career, and you've stayed. It's interesting. You made major jumps within a bound, right? Like it's not like you totally pivoted. But do you think like most people could go like say vendor to client side? Do you think most people could have the skill set to do both if they're willing to make that jump, or do you think it's kind of a different skill set that?
No, I think there's I don't know if this is a personal perception or a, a broad one, but I think there's a lot of like perceived glam to be the client side. Like, people always talk about moving from, going client side. And I loved being vendor side. Like I said, it's where I honed my skills and polished my craft, and it's it helps me on the client side because I know how the sausage gets made. I know what the challenges and the timelines, and I can be realistic, and it helps me manage my stakeholders. And I think, not to toot my own horn, but I think, my work is pretty good so far at Riot. And I think people like and appreciate working with me because I'm realistic about what we can and cannot do, because I've had the benefit of making the sausage. I know what we can and can't do. Like, Chuck, you talked to me about, like, potentially low incidence rates on the one project, and da da da. Like, I'm like, just put some language in the SOW so that all our bases are covered. Like, I'll never push back on stuff. And so I think
Yeah.
my agencies that I work with like working with me because I'm realistic, and then also my stakeholders get a lot of transparency and visibility into kind of how it works in the process, and from there, we could everyone, it's good. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you find that like are there skills that when you're vendor side that you don't need as much of now, or like how's your day different, or what do you think are some of the biggest differences?
I don't need to work with SVSS anymore.
Yeah. Get out of some of the details.
Yeah, it's nice.
Highlight.
It's nice not being in the weeds. Like I said, I've always been kind of more of a right brain storyteller, creative thinker, and being, out of the weeds allows me to kind of stretch that muscle a little bit more, and make sure that the stories we're telling are compelling and insightful. And so that's where the bulk of my focus day to day is making sure that we're delivering insights, not data.
Since you know how the sausage is made, what's your biggest pet peeve when it comes to dealing with suppliers now?
Timelines. Just tell me how much time you need. Don't overpromise.
It's so hard right now. Like this is one of the more challenging times, I think. I'm sure it's the case on both sides of the business, but it's definitely there's a lot of hurdles right now. A lot of
Yeah.
hurdles. Both technical and just like with people. I think people are tired.
Supply chain.
Yeah, there's just a lot. There really is a lot right now. I can't remember a time where there were so many kind of hurdles happening at once.
Yeah. But to one of your topics in the list that you sent over, I think one of the nice things that has come out of the pandemic and research is qualitative. Qualitative's gotten a lot easier because we have this kind of new trust in some of the more online methodologies. Like, I don't think I'll ever go back to a world where I'm traveling across the country or around the world to do focus groups. I mean,
Well,
the in-person
it's funny
focus group is dead.
No, it's really funny you bring that up because I actually think we're going to do a whole episode on that because Maggie and I talk about this all the time. It's really fascinating. I mean, this is exactly you said it perfectly. But people trust these things. The tools were there, over the last 5 years at least. The tools were there, and we had like on our side of the business, we saw the really techie clients adopt them a number of years ago, actually. But it's fascinating how like a lot of people were forced because of COVID to try some of these digital call methods, and they've gotten very comfortable with them. But it's also interesting too, Maggie. We're talking about like just this last like 2 months, I would say. All of a sudden, we're getting a lot of RFPs for traditional call again, and so on our side of the business, our immediate question was like, "Wow, like how is the staff going to react to this? Like, do they want to do this? Like, like I was bidding on this thing last week that's going like all through South America, and like that kind of thing used to be very common. And it's interesting that we had a 2 year break from it. And I think that some client side researchers are super excited to hit the road again. Like we've had a few, I've had a few discussions with people, and then like, I'm so excited to go back to like Mexico City or Brazil or whatever. And it's funny how like I don't know where this will be in 2 years. Like I don't know if the pendulum will swing back and you'll have people wanting to do more in person, or if people are going to be more like you, or it's like, hey, my stakeholders are comfortable with this. Like let's get it done faster and cheaper. digital
Yeah.
because the
Well,
travel.
let me ask you this though. The RFPs that you're getting, are they for like ethnos? Like what type of qual is it?
I just did traditional focus groups in person a few weeks ago, and it was the
Wow.
first
Okay.
time I've done that in 2+ years. And the content, it would have worked virtually, but I think it made sense to do it in person too. I mean, it wasn't, but it what was well, I think there's a couple of things, right? I think in addition to clients being more accepting of the methods, I think consumers have gotten better at
Yeah.
virtual qual too, right? Like we spend so much more of our time in these environments that you're not having all the technical problems and people on mute and talking over each other. They've, because of our work environment, the qual environment is easier online too.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. But I one of the things that I enjoyed about the in-person groups was that being in a back room, you forget how much happens in a back room when you're
Yeah.
in person, and it forced us to have more conversations and debriefs and insights and to collaborate with the moderator more. And, it's stuff that I don't know that it fundamentally changed the output, but it made for a much deeper conversation around the insights that came out of it. And I do think that there might be a bit of a hunger for that piece of it. I don't know if there's enough of a hunger for people to be traveling, particularly within the continental US,
Yeah.
around to groups, but I could see them happening here and there, and then more of like a hybrid situation where you have some of it done in person and some of it done
Yeah.
online. From a digital, like from an ethnography perspective, I think we could have made the argument years ago that some of that's better virtually anyway, because it gives you a longer window into, you can watch someone for a week, you can have them, uploading things and recording things and that type of stuff that makes the digital the ethnography more interesting anyway.
Yeah.
But
We always talk about how good, especially the under 25 set is. I mean, they can make their own UX videos. Like you can
right.
give them instructions now that would have been insane before, and they're so good with video and they could do it. But you know what
Yeah.
else is interesting? All day, Maggie and I have spent a lot of time talking about this. Like I think we might have you back in a week to do a whole episode on this, but
Do it.
but it's so interesting that like a lot of the RFPs for this are also coming from kind of techie clients that were first to adopt digital qual, and now they're kind of like, hey, listen, I want to. And some of it, I would say very little. What I'm seeing has to do with that we need to do this in person. I think it's more the second part that Maggie was hitting about. It was like, when we travel together, especially if we bring the agencies as well, there's just a lot of good collaboration that happens in person, and it's similar to the people that want to spend some time in the office with each other. It's like there's something to like us setting aside a week or whatever it is to all debate something in person together.
Yeah.
But I do think that they've forgotten how expensive this stuff is too. That's one of the things we've brought it up is like, hey, you gotta like, there's travel here. This is expensive. This is
Yeah.
an expensive way to do research, and
Yeah.
digital's cheaper. And so that's one of the discussions we're having too. Is like the way you spend this out is really expensive. Like, is this really what you want to do?
It is not efficient. I mean, I
No.
don't think we could argue. In person,
No.
not efficient.
And let's be honest, like it sounds glamorous, but you're not going to like the Bahamas. You're going to Skokie, Illinois.
Well, yeah.
I do think, though, I will say, early in my career, it was an amazing way to learn by going and just watching how other people interacted with clients. I mean, I think there's a sort of a learning experience that if you don't do in-person qual, you miss out on to some extent. So I do sort of, I don't know, that makes me sound like I'm 400 years old, but
No,
there is something.
I think it's really important. It is. It's really important. It's like it's especially with like traditional call, like you're jumping in, you're collaborating with the moderator. It's a little bit easier to have these discussions with the moderator in between groups. You're seeing that like you can tinker with the guide. You could do these things. You can make changes, and that's kind of empowering to know that you could be creative and you can like, hey, follow your gut. Like, what are you looking? What's interesting to you here? What do you want to know? Like, there's something about the way it happens live that I think is a little bit more empowering. I know all of that happens digitally too, and it works great digitally, but I don't know. There's something a little bit different about kind of just sitting with someone and getting to know them.
For
I think
sure.
I'd like to do it twice a year. Like twice a year, I'd
Yeah.
like to go to in-person focus
Well,
groups.
In like Miami.
I mean, Olga's still a young kitten, but Maggie and I were getting older and we have kids, so it's the twice a year thing just because I'm at the age where I've done it. But I mean, if I was like 25,
No, I'd be all over that.
I think that going like, nobody wants to do this every week, right? But I think about all of those trips I took as a younger researcher, and I feel like that's where I learned to be a consultant in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
You learn, and it's funny because like live qual's a great example, right? Ethnographies are a perfect example of this. There's just a lot of stuff that goes wrong, right? Like your car breaks down, or you can't, there's just stuff that you have to like learn to like unstick yourself from, and like travel mistakes, and like,
or in my case, you end up in an Orlando hospital for 3 days.
yeah, that's a big one. That's a really big one. Yeah.
I just was the in-person trip that I took was with the moderator that you were with then, and we were discussing what an eventful trip that was.
She called me at home. I remember that. She called me. She's like, "Oh my God, did you hear?" And I'm like, "What? What?" Yeah.
So never a dull moment.
Stories like that, by the way.
Yeah, nothing like passing out in the back room in front of all of your clients.
Think how much empathy you built with them, though. I mean, just
they're gonna remember you forever. No, but it's. Do you miss it at all, Olga? Do you want to take trips at all, or you're like, nah, I'll do this differently all the time?
I'm tired, Chuck.
Yeah. So, well, when you have kids, the math on all this stuff changes a lot, right? It's like, it's so different when you're 25. And we were talking, Pamela and I were talking about last week that we have this one or two clients in particular. But so this is my theory. Olga hasn't heard this, Maggie's heard this, but I'm going to throw this at you. A lot of times, the person who becomes pretty high up, as everyone knows, like most of the companies we're dealing with here, they have really big budgets. They're big companies. They're big operations, or they wouldn't be doing these sophisticated research projects. And the person that gets at a high level at those companies has a lot of energy, right? Like some don't, but there's a lot of people who end up being stakeholders or clients in this type of stuff we do. And those people have a lot of energy. And we were laughing last week that when we went to dinner about how like there's so many times when, especially if you had to do that traditional focus group thing where you fly to New York on Sunday or Monday and you work your way back across the country to the West Coast by Friday. And if you have one of those clients that wants to go out in New York till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. the first night, you've got the rest of the week that you've got to like keep up on, and it's exhausting, right? It's just, you're so tired. But it's over and over again. It seems like it's the client that Maggie and I have had this situation every time where it's the client that doesn't want to go to bed. And we're like, oh my God, how are you still up? And
oh no, I'm not client that goes to bed.
Well, I think it builds stamina, though. It teaches you sort of like, it's like almost a good lesson in like time management and being. I don't know that it teaches boundaries, but it teaches a lot of other great lessons.
It teaches stamina, right? It teaches stamina. And that is the thing, is that when you have kids and later in life, that the math on that gets a lot different. Like, oh no, I'm gone for a week, and it just gets a lot harder to do. Whereas like the biggest cost when you're younger is you're just tired at the end. But now you're like, oh, I got to arrange childcare. What if someone gets sick? Or it just gets a lot harder to manage later.
I will say my most recent trip, I used to be so good at being able to just like quickly pack my bags. Like I had a routine, and I'm so out of my routine that it took me longer to do. Like even when I got to the airport, I'm like, wait, what do I do next? Where do I go? Where do I get my, my snack from and all that stuff. I was totally thrown off by the entire experience.
Yeah, I flew to Toronto recently, and like I was like, how much your hour? I had like a water bottle in my bag. I like, was holding the line. I was like totally like that person that like, you never want to be stuck behind in the line of security. But
yep, that was me too. I forgot to take something out of my bag. I got in trouble.
Yeah, I was like, she's on, off. I'm so confused.
So I'm out of practice.
Yeah, it's funny. We all used to travel. So I used to travel so much, and it's so much less now. But anyhow, I know we've taken up a lot of your time, Olga. It was super nice of you to join us and do this and let us rant on and on about all this.
I love it. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
We've missed you, so we're always happy to get it.
I know.
I missed you guys too.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.